My name is Jerry Bogaz. I'm with the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council, and I'll be moderating this session. Just want to start with a little bit of context, and then we'll get right into our panelists. First of all, infrastructure is obviously a topic of national significance and attention at this point. And there's some key federal developments that we're looking at probably happening beginning in 2019 with regard to infrastructure. There are also agency developments in our region here, such as ongoing capital programming at both the state and the local levels, including agencies like the MTA. And it's really a giant balancing act when you come to needs, considering needs and balancing them against what we're anticipating as resources. So there's a great deal of uncertainty with infrastructure, and I think it's heightened at this point because the federal role in infrastructure is sort of unknown at this point. We're going to see what's developing over the next year or so. But at the same time, as a region, we're looking at a number of transformative infrastructure projects. We're going to be touching on them for Long Island today. So you have this uncertainty, but at the same time, we're making a great deal of progress on large infrastructure projects that have been planned over the last 2 decades actually coming to fruition. So we hope to illuminate on this panel these types of issues as they relate to Long Island. Our panelists are Donna Betty, the Chief Planning Officer with MTA Long Island Railroad, and in a tag team, she's going to be speaking, and then Mitch Pally will speak about what she said. He's a member of the MTA board. Jack Kazuz with the Nice Bus, Chief Executive Officer, will be talking about infrastructure needs from the perspective of a bus operator. And then James Bonner, President of New York Atlantic Railway, will be speaking about goods movement and infrastructure needs for goods movement. So you'll get a broad range of different topics here in terms of infrastructure. I do want to point out just before we start that, funding is a crazy quilt of different jurisdictions and silos and so forth. There's a federal process starting with Congress, coming down to states and then to metropolitan regions. There's a state process through the New York State Legislature appropriating funding. And then there's a very vibrant local process that involves agencies like the MTA and local counties, municipalities, and so forth. All that funding is coming down to project sponsors. The New York Metropolitan Transportation Council plays a role in deciding how the federal dollars are used, and the council is a council of governments, so that the MTA is members of suburban counties, New York City, New York State, and so forth. But the sponsors are the agencies that either operate services or own facilities and are using the funding to be able to maintain and upgrade those facilities and services. Some of the state and local funding does go through the federal process as local match, but they're also independent state and local funding streams. And some of the federal money comes directly down to project sponsors through nationally competitive discretionary programs. So, this is about as simple as I could make it, and you can imagine what goes into bringing the dollars down to transportation investments and infrastructure investments at a metropolitan region like this. So we are in an interesting situation with the current status of federal funding. We have the Current Authorization Act, which is the FAST Act, and I've forgotten what that acronym stands for actually, but that expires basically the last year there is fiscal 20. And then after that, we have a transportation improvement program in our region, which includes the part of the MTA capital program that is seeking federal dollars. That's actually, the current program is through fiscal 21, and it totals about $36 billion, okay, $11 billion of which is federal. So that just gives you some idea of the scope of the funding we're talking about. Reauthorization is going to happen actually in 2019. Congress appears to be ready to begin to discuss reauthorizing federal spending for the next, hopefully, 5 or 6 years. But we don't know what that's going to look like. And we are in the process of developing with our member agencies a new transportation improvement program, which will stretch out to 2024. So of course there's a lot of uncertainty there. We're going to be making a lot of assumptions initially until Congress actually passes its Authorization Act in terms of what that future funding is going to be. So this is just to give you a little bit of context of where we are right now with all these different forces in terms of looking forward on infrastructure. So, having said that, if we could switch to the next one, which will be Donna Betty, who is doing a video and a PowerPoint. Donna?
Sure. Thank you. Good morning. We're going to run through a quick Eastside Access video that actually touches on some of our infrastructure projects that are underway. And then I will just follow up with a couple additional slides about other projects that we're in touch on with the video.
We're working to ensure that the places where children...
Something monumental is afoot on both sides of the East River. Something even the New Yorker who's seen everything has never seen before. At separate construction sites in Manhattan and Queens, the seeds of transformational change are being sown. Where the past not only meets the future, it becomes it. We all know the Long Island Railroad has a terminal located conveniently in Midtown Manhattan, but soon it'll have two. And when it does, it'll revolutionize travel between Manhattan and the island of almost 8 million people to its east. When East Side Access brings Long Island Railroad service into Grand Central Terminal for the first time, along with it comes more service options and capacity than ever before. The kind of flexibility that'll give rise to new connection opportunities and new travel choices, not just for LARR customers, but for the entire region. A game changer? You bet. But while this, the largest public works project in the U.S., is still a few years away from fruition, work carries on in earnest, under your feet, or perhaps even in your neighborhood, that you can't see, hear, or feel. But it's there, and it's significant. On the Queens side, metamorphosis has taken place over the last few years, bringing shape and functionality to what was once the wide-open cut of the entry point of the 63rd Street Tunnel. 3 new structures now dominate the landscape above the former open cut. The first is a substation to power the trains. The second, because no one likes a stuffy rail terminal, is a ventilation plant. Last but not least is the future yard services building for those who clean and fix the trains at the future midday storage yard, which we'll get to in a moment. The intricate freeze and carve excavation work under Northern Boulevard is now a fully formed arch. What were once 4 large boreholes in the sidewall of the pit is now the site of the future Plaza Interlocking, clearly defined subterranean entranceways to the new tunnels in its Sunnyside Yard.
Plaza is the first interlocking to the west of Harold. It's a series of switches and signals that'll line you up for whatever tunnels or tracks that you'll be going to in Grand Central.
In 2 of the tunnels, you'll currently see the very beginnings of the future track structure. To get to Penn Station and someday Grand Central, trains must traverse the very busy Harold Interlocking. With 700 to 800 train movements a day, it's the busiest of its kind in the U.S. And it's about to get some major upgrades that'll serve customers for generations to come.
This location will have a brand new signal system, all state-of-the-art, with new catenary, new third rail, new switches, a new state-of-the-art microprocessor system for the signal controls. You know, while you may not be able to physically touch it and look at it, it definitely improves the train operation through the area.
The 3 passenger tunnels will daylight on the LARR's main line at Harold Interlocking, and all that additional service to Grand Central will result in the need for additional train sets and a place to store, clean, and maintain them. That's where the Yard Lead Tunnel comes in. That track will allow trains to loop around Sunnyside Yard and end up in the 24-track midday storage yard, now under construction. In this location, it's an absolute must-have.
The trains will take customers from Eastern terminals in the morning into Grand Central and then lay up here for the midday to be serviced. And then in the evening, they will go from here into Grand Central and then accommodate our customers from here out to their home terminals. The farther away you are, the less efficient it is, the longer the trip time is, the best place for it is here.
So, faster for them means faster for you. Across the East River, Manhattan bedrock beneath Park Avenue gave way to 2 fully formed and then waterproofed caverns that one day will play home to the carriages, bustle, the befitting a Grand Rail terminal in this grandest of grand cities. Over the past year or two, an astonishing amount of progress has been made on the station's superstructure that will one day support the 8-track multi-level passenger terminal that LIRR customers will call home. Design elements like the nodes under each street, 45th through 48th, are now clearly visible. Work has even begun on the lower level platforms.
If you went down there 2 years ago, what you would see in the caverns is 2 large holes under construction. If you went down there today, what you would see is a superstructure, 3 different levels, the upper level, the lower level, and the mezzanine. In some spots, you can actually see finished structural work going on, and what the station's actually going to look like in the end.
Moving up one level to the future LIRR concourse, work continues on the critical fire and waterproofing, ductwork, plumbing, etc. The guts of the place, basically, most of which you'll never see. It is important to the viability of the terminal as the trains themselves. And if you look closely, you'll notice the endoskeletons of many future customer amenities and facilities. Look even closer, you'll detect some very early finishing work, like these glass panels along the 48th Street escalator bank between concourse and track-level mezzanine, or these at the escalator bank in 47th. Along one or two of those escalator banks, you'll see the very beginnings of, well, escalators. Just a few of the roughly 14,000 project assets to be built. The assets built now will be fully maintained while the future ones are being built, so that they all work come opening day. So how will you get down to the LIRR concourse? Well, you'll have a number of options, like escalators from Grand Central's existing dining concourse or the legendary Biltmore Room. You'll even have access through the very tall One Vanderbilt development being built right next door on 42nd. But if you ask LIRR customers, the access they want most is right now.
I think the east side access will be for me and maybe for my son in the future a very great direct line.
It'll save me a lot of time, so I can't wait for it to happen.
When it's complete, I'll be thrilled because I work upstairs in the Chrysler Building from Grand Central, and it will save me a subway fare and an extra piece of my commute.
I think it's a great project, would shave roughly about maybe 20 minutes off of my commute, cut down, I think, on congestion, and give people other alternatives into coming into Midtown Manhattan.
Investments in transportation are really good public policy. It makes life better for all of us. You not only save time and more efficient, but it improves your quality of life. So this is really a good use of public funds. This is what we should be doing.
When the customers come in for the very first time, what they'll experience is a brand new, clean, quiet, relaxed environment. It's going to be bright, it's going to be spacious, comfortable, and welcoming. We know that our customers are going to love it and that their patience will be rewarded in the end.
Looking ahead to the not-so-distant future, a vastly different line of railroad is on the horizon. 2 Manhattan terminals, an increased capacity through Jamaica, a main line with a desperately needed third track, better stations and fewer grade crossings, and a Ronkonkoma branch, 2 trains instead of 1. All major projects on their way. There will be places to put the trains necessary to run the enhanced service. The aforementioned midday storage yard and the mid-Suffolk yard in Ronkonkoma. And new trains to put them. Beautiful new M9 electric coaches will very soon join their M7 counterparts. Holistically, what it all amounts to is a completely transformed LIRR. For you, for me, and for future generations. New Yorkers recognizing the needs of New Yorkers and getting it
from an
done.
energy standpoint, 28% of our energy use is from transportation as well. So oftentimes we
So
expend more
following
energy
up on
getting
that
to
video,
work than actually
I have a couple of
use
slides
that.
that actually touches on a lot that we already saw, so I'll just run through those.
Trying to have more
8 minutes of
sustainable
my time.
forms of transportation helps greatly from the environment.
Just wanted to provide you with some fun facts. We always have this in most of our presentations.
So what are some barriers
Again,
to
just highlighting how much of an
transit
economic engine Long Island Railroad is for Long
familiar with all of
Island.
this.
We
If
all
you
know
look,
it's the busiest
first,
commuter railroad in North
limited
America.
sidewalks,
I won't go through every single bullet here, but We have one of the region's largest we are one of the region's largest employers with over 7,000 employees. Our operating budget is over $2 billion, and annually we have $600 million for a capital investment, and that's based on our 2015 to 19 program.
Half a mile would not be safe. Because without
by the numbers you can see, we have over 1,000 electric cars, 134 bi-level coaches, and of course 24 diesel locomotives and dual mode locomotives.
They flow in the middle of the
This pretty much is just a caption of most of the projects that were just discussed. I mean, we touched on the double track, we touched on the third track, and of course we know with the third track, a huge part of that is eliminating a lot of the grade crossings. This is a depiction of all system-wide, some of the projects that we are looking at. You can see we start from the west end, you know, with the East Side Access Project, going all the way out to the east with, of course, a midday storage yard.
Make it better, you know, for everyone.
On our west end, I don't know, this is a little known secret, but there is this huge project that's underway right now, which is the Moynihan Train Hall. When this is done in 2020, I think that's the plan, and this is, of course, one of the governor's major initiatives. We will have over 255,000 square foot. I think it will actually be larger than Grand Central at the end of the day. So we're looking forward to this project being done. We just recently completed our West End concourse. If you're on the west end of Penn Station and happen to be there, it's obviously a much nicer environment, and it's you know, it allows access to our tracks. It will connect Penn Station and Moynihan Train Hall when that's done. We just heard about the East Side Access Project. It is an $11 billion project, and of course, we're hoping that this gets done by 2022.
Stand on it, you know, in front of there. So these are all barriers.
Moving to the east, this is our third track project. We broke ground earlier this year with the governor. We know that we'll be eliminating grade crossings. We'll be building new parking facilities, and of course, we'll be enhancing the stations along the corridor.
First mile, last mile options.
Our main line double track, it was hot off the presses. We're done with that, and of course, this clearly adds service and reliability to our system.
In a safe manner.
And our midday storage yard, this construction effort is actually underway, and this again, as mentioned in the video, will support our East Side Access because we will have additional fleet that we need to have storage for. Station enhancements, about 39 stations across the system. You can see the map, it ranging all the way from the west end, all the way over to the east. Some of these stations are actually completed to date, and of course we'll be rolling them out in the next couple of years. There are just some pictures of some of those stations that's been completed. This new initiative, Central Branch Electrification, President Eng has been talking about it. It is actually one little unknown fact that if we do have hiccups along our main line, there are other ways to get around it, and this will just allow for so much more in terms of operational flexibility if we're able to electrify that central branch. Right now it's only diesel, and so of course we are limited to only our diesel fleet. With so much electric fleet, we could always go around via the South Shore, head north, head up to Port Jeff branch, or head further east on the mainline branch. So this is something that we are looking to kickstart. We hope it should be a part of our next capital plan, but in this current plan, we at least hope to start some preliminary design and engineering work.
30% increase in transit ridership. So there's great opportunity with making the roads accessible for transit.
Just next slide.
You know, people driving their cars. This was another study that was done in municipalities and in counties to say those counties or municipalities that had
It's actually one of our last slides.
what was transit ridership. Now, this isn't
Okay, so another initiative that we are actually, that's underway is eventually having centralized train control. We have a operating facility in our main Jamaica building. We're in the process of completing a new facility in the JCC buildings, the Air Train building, where we'll have our operations moved over into this new facility. This, I think we're probably the only agency that actually doesn't have a centralized control facility right now in terms of, you know, the operating of our trains. So when this is completed, we'll be all centralized. We'll be able to move all the tower operation into one facility. And of course, this will only help us, especially as we communicate when we have hiccups along the system. Everybody will be in the same place. We'll have our signal department, our mechanical guys, our power, and of course, our public information office to get information right hot off the presses. So this is another initiative that we are pushing forward and hope to have completed very shortly. So with that, that's Mitch.
Thank you. There's not much I can add with all of that. All of that is about $20 billion when you add it all together. That is going to benefit Long Island. That's been appropriated by the MTA. Most of it is paid for by MTA itself, which is why we have debt service, except for a major portion of East Side Access itself. Two other projects that I wanted to discuss quickly that are in planning stages. One is electrification from Ronkonkoma to Yaphank. As you know, there's significant development in the Yaphank area, and the railroad is looking at what we can do to accommodate that, both for the development there, but also as a reliever for Ronkonkoma. As you know, Ronkonkoma is the last of the electrified line on the main line, and therefore a lot of people from the East End will go to Ronkonkoma because they want the one-seat ride which Ronkonkoma provides. That has put substantial distress on parking at Ronkonkoma, and that's before Critex development on the north side and whatever Suffolk County decides to do on the south side. And so we're looking at Yaphank also as a reliever for Ronkonkoma, letting the electric train start there so that people, especially those from the East End, do not have to go to Ronkonkoma, they can go to Yaphank. That requires a relocation of the Yaphank station. I will bet you there is nobody in this room, probably other than Anthony, who can find the Yaphank station. I was out there once, I couldn't find it, okay? And I had the map and I couldn't find it. And so that obviously is an integral part of that. We're working with Suffolk County DPW on access points. The town and the county are very supportive of making that happen. And so I hope that that will be part of the next capital plan to make that project happen. The second piece that is very important, and the supervisor mentioned it today, is of course electrification from Huntington to Port Jefferson, which has been something that has been talked about, and in fact was going to be the line that was electrified first until the decision was made in the 80s to do the main line to Ronkonkoma first. Now that Ronkonkoma has double track, which is now finished, we're looking at the possibility of Huntington to Port Jefferson to electrify that line. It is a substantial investment by the railroad, but we believe it will provide significant benefits to that part of Suffolk County. It will also alleviate one of the major issues we have on the Huntington branch, which is the lack of a yard large enough at Huntington to store trains. We don't like to run trains empty, but that's what we have to do in the morning to get trains to Huntington because we have no yard in Huntington to locate them, which is why, if you look at their numbers every month, Huntington has the largest number of standees of any station on Long Island because we can't get the trains there to accommodate that. So the electrification issue that we're working with Suffolk County on from Huntington to Port Jefferson, and the ability to make a yard somewhere in that area would not only provide additional benefits to that area of the county, but would also provide significant benefits to the Huntington community by being able to provide more trains in the morning. Just remember, when all of this is done, on January 1st, 2023, you will be able to go to any of your Long Island Railroad stations and decide, I'm going to take the one-seat ride to Penn or a one-seat ride to Grand Central. That is going to transform Long Island transportation and transform the ability of our commuters to get to where they want to go. And in addition to that, one of the other benefits of third track is the ability finally to have people actually take the train from New York City to Long Island for our jobs that are here. They may want to live in the city, but they can now, will be able to take the train to jobs on the island, reverse commuting. When a third track was built on the Metro North system, Metro North almost has as many people who use the train within the Metro North area, not going to the city, as they do going to the city. And that's because they have the flexibility to do that, which we do not have. We believe that that will provide a significant benefit to Long Island by people who are going to be able to live in Manhattan, or live in Queens, or live in Brooklyn, and get to jobs on Long Island for the first time. That's an additional benefit of third track, in addition to what we talked about before, but that would be a significant transformational issue for Long Island itself. I think I'm done. One thing I do want to apologize, I have to leave directly at 11 o'clock because I have to take my 90-year-old mother to the doctor today. It's my day, and I'm nothing if not a very good son.
Thank you very much to Mitch and to Donna. I just made a follow-up note to find the Yaphank station, so we'll get right on that. I've seen the overhead. The other thing is interesting you mentioned Metro North, because there was a third track project for Metro North also in the late 80s, which made possible the reverse commute markets they have now. The third busiest Metro North station is the Fordham station in the Bronx, taking people north to White Plains and northeast into Connecticut. So similar things can happen here on Long Island. So as important as the Long Island Railroad is to transportation on Long Island, there are other mobility services that are very significant. And so Jack Kazuz is going to talk about the perspective from the NICE bus operation in terms of infrastructure, and then James will talk about goods movement, which is also critical on Long Island, because the primary goods movement artery right now is called the Long Island Expressway. So, Jack, you're up next.
Thank you, Jerry. So, we all know, I'll play a different role here a little bit, and that's being realistic. Our role as the NICE, the Nassau County bus system, is really to support, obviously, economic growth, support our residents here in Nassau County, but also support the growth of the railroad. Mitch has talked about, and I've heard him speak many times, about all the benefits that this adds to the railroad. But we also heard this morning a lot about parking at our stations. And what are we going to do about that? We all know that we heard this morning that it costs $40,000 to supply one parking spot for this projected potentially 12 to 15% increase in ridership at Long Island Railroad. So how, as villages, towns, how do we handle that? How do we, in good conscience, use that taxpayer money to supply that parking to change the character of our villages and to add more of a carbon footprint into our villages? How do we do that responsibly and in good conscience? Well, there are other alternatives. And Nassau County's bus system, NICE, is one of those alternatives. Starting in January, we are launching the Great Neck Park District Buzz shuttle, which will pick you up at the end of your block and take you directly to the train station in the AM and the PM under reservation. So you'll buy a 1-week reservation. It's cheaper than parking. It's more convenient. We guarantee you a 1-seat ride right to the train station within 7 minutes. So those are the innovations that we can accomplish by using the other networks within the system to grow Nassau County. It's a responsible way of doing things. And it's a much more innovative way to do it. So let's talk about innovation briefly. I have very dull slides. Thank you so much for the video. Let's face it, I could show you a picture of a bus, but I don't think anybody's going to get that excited about it. But bottom line is comparisons, just so we all understand. I think our bus system in Nassau County is the asset that no one really knows they have. Mitch and Donna both talked about 300,000 people a day take the Long Island Railroad. Do you know 100,000 people a day take the NICE bus system? That's a huge proportion to our total transportation needs here in Nassau County. And it's growing. But it takes us to be good purveyors of the assets over time. That means, rolling stock that is up to date, that is well maintained, that is comfortable, that has all the things now that customers expect. They expect Wi-Fi, they expect charging stations, and we have those on our vehicles. They're all accessible. So anyone with a disability can get on our vehicles at any time, every single vehicle. And that's a fleet of 350 vehicles. They are all CNG, they're all compressed natural gas. And we are also looking at adding a fleet of electric vehicles and electric charging stations to, again, add some diversity to our fleet over time. So the one thing that I can say that NiceBus has done in a very short period of time is diversify our fleet. And I'm not even going to really follow the slides too much, but part of being an efficient provider is understanding that you have to match the seat to the need. In other words, I don't want to put a 40-foot bus or a 60-foot bus out there when a 20-foot bus will do, or a sedan will do. And we have that flexibility in our fleet now. We have articulated vehicles all the way down to sedans. We provide that service. So when we talk about assets and we talk about infrastructure, really we're a much more nimble approach to the infrastructure. Obviously we have rolling stock, we ride on the roads, but how can we as a county, as Long Island, help that along? How can we get more people out of their cars into the buses? And that is really looking at the street infrastructure to help us do that. Signal light prioritization that allows a bus to pass through a red light, turn it green as it approaches. Street cutouts that allow bus-only lanes. Street cutouts that allow correct bus stops. And those assets around bus stops that make bus stops much more appealing. Digital signing, Wi-Fi, all those things around those that we need to invest in. The actual physical vehicle itself is easy to maintain and easy to procure. It's the assets on the street that we need help with. Very important. Technology, we can take care of that. The technology improvements that we see in the bus system is different from anything you've ever seen before. We're using cloud-based systems that understand in real time the efficiency of the vehicle and makes changes to that schedule by itself as we go along. It's really an artificial intelligence system that works through. We're the first bus system in the country using this type of system. So these are the kind of efficiencies that make a bus system really connect into our train system, into our car share system, into our bike share system. And those are the kind of things that we look for. I'm going to pass up this slide here.
There are obvious reasons for
maybe I'm not. I guess I'm not. Okay. Imagine with me a slide that says, there it is. So why do we look at these infrastructure improvements, and how do we look as a community going forward in a sustainable, responsible way, understanding that transportation isn't just the railroad, an important part of our system, but it's our roadways, it's our bus system, it's our car share, it's our bike share, and it's whatever else that comes along. First of all, it's our responsibility to ensure proper management of county assets. Over the last 7 years, that Transdev, by the way, my parent company, we are a PPOP, a true private-public partnership, has increased the understanding and the asset value of the assets sitting in Nassau County tremendously over the last few years. But having a plan to keep that, all the assets in good repair. Number two, leverage technology and leverage global best practices to bring to Nassau County. We've done that. Last year we launched Link, which is an on-demand system. A bus will come to your address, exactly where you're standing. It will pick you up and take you exactly to where you want to go. The first one in the country to try that. It's a pilot. It's ending this December. We've gathered a lot of data from that, and we're going to use that in the Buzz launch for Great Neck next month. So we're leveraging those new technologies. But how do we pay for this? I'm going to throw this out there a little bit because it's a little bit controversial. But how do we pay for this going forward? There are funding sources out there. We just have to have the confidence and the willingness to do these things. But parking surcharges. I'm from LA. I grew up in LA, and I used to commute into the city every day. Our parking here on Long Island, I'm going to take the shot here, is too cheap. There is a huge opportunity here to fund transit through parking surcharges. It's $1 a day. But that is a way that we get the infrastructure that we need to stay competitive on Long Island. Excuse me. Reworked parking space allocation for TOD. What does that mean? That means there is a parking allocation per unit. We all know this. Maybe it's based on your square footage, or maybe it's based on your bedrooms. But there's 2 spaces per 1,000 square feet. Why don't we change that? Why don't we force that to one parking space per 1,000 square feet? Allow that developer to add more rentable space, but also charge them higher taxes to do that. Ride-hailing surcharge, I know there is one now. We have to reallocate some of that to stay on Long Island and to go to the bus system. And then, I'll say this last one. Again, I'm from LA. I come from a car culture. But there is something to be said about a gas tax that stays on Long Island and pays for Long Island transit over time. So again, those aren't very popular. You can throw a chair at me on the way out. But I think those are the kind of things that we have to think about, not necessarily for today, but for infrastructure going forward, and how do we stay ahead of things. Again, we're pretty nimble because we don't have those hard assets. We go through roadways. But remember, a bus can only go as fast as the traffic in front of it. So we're traveling at about 14 miles an hour right now, but we're slowing down. There are more cars on the system. The last 5 years, we've slowed down almost 1.5 miles. So we have to keep up by putting these infrastructure changes in, biting the bullet, but understanding that it's what Mitch and Don have done over time. We're going to see that effect soon. So, thank you.
So while we were waiting for everybody to come in, Jerry was telling me about a story he read. They had done a study on bus drivers, and bus drivers, Jerry told me, have musculoskeletal problems because they sit too much. So I'm going to stand up. Okay. So I am James Bonner with the New York and Atlantic Railway. By a quick show of hands, and I know this is an educated group, how many people are aware that there is a dedicated freight railroad operating on Long Island on a daily basis? Right? So that's a much better response than I typically get in any audience. Typically, if I'm at an event and I'm talking to someone and they ask what I do, I tell them I work for the railroad, and they say, "Oh, how nice, Long Island Railroad, I love it." Or maybe they say something different than that. Maybe they do. They don't appreciate it. But we are a result of a privatized concession from the Long Island Railroad in 1997 to move freight separate than passenger. Those are certainly different focuses, and for very important reasons, it was separated. And we're tasked with making sure that we get goods onto and off of Long Island in an economical, friendly, and non-obtrusive manner. And we try very hard to do that. We operate and have operating rights for about 270 miles on Long Island and in New York City. We operate in Brooklyn and Queens. I'm going to stay focused on Long Island for the most part here. The trunk line, I would call it, is out to Calverton/Riverhead area. We run the preponderance of our traffic on Long Island down that range. But we do also run to Huntington, and we run down to Babylon for a couple different lanes of business. If you are from Long Island, and even if you were or were not familiar with us, if you ever drank beer, if you've eaten a pizza or a piece of bread, or you've thrown any of those things away, you are a New York and Atlantic Railway customer downstream somehow. We bring in products to about 80 different customers throughout Queens, Brooklyn, and Long Island, and a lot of them are on Long Island, and they're moving primarily heavy goods. So it's building materials, foods, the aforementioned beer, steel, and then outbound, conversely, is not a popular topic, but those things have to go somewhere. So when the buildings are being torn down, or when things are being disposed of, those have to move off of the island. And train is an economical and friendly, environmentally friendly way to do that. The locomotive in this picture and the one that was on the previous picture is a Tier 3 plus emissions locomotive. So we are sensitive to the environment and to what our pollution profile is. Long Island Railroad has been incredibly supportive of that effort. They procured these 2 locomotives with state funding And they're on a second phase, working on some additional locomotives right now that they're going to go to Tier 4. And the easiest way for me to describe Tier 4 is, by most accounts, the air coming out is cleaner than the air going out, especially as we're into high pollution days and ozone alert and gridlock alert days. This is the most environmentally effective and efficient way to get products on and off the line. We also are removing, as you can imagine, we talked about a little bit ago, trucks from Long Island Expressway. That's our role. We are an economic driver, even if you don't see us. Those customers that use us benefit from what is a competitive rate process, and there are great jobs that we provide that we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Take these great shots, and as a planner, it gives you perspective to see things from above.
It's me leaning on Long Island again.
In a new way. So this is again the South Road Avenue, the main street of Linden. And,
so as a private entity, we're tasked with making a profit, obviously, or else nobody would hold that company. One of the things that Long Island tasked us with when we took our original concession was growing the carload. So when we took over in 1997, it was about 10,000 carloads per year, which is about 40,000 truck equivalents, 53-foot trucks. You can see what we've done in the last 5 or 6 years, again, with great Long Island support. In 2012, we were at about 21,000 cars. We'll push 30,000 rail cars this year, and we're not doing with a lot of extra infrastructure. We're typically able to just run along the train. So that's a great way to maximize what our opportunity is. Instead of running a 5-car train, you can run a 10 or a 15 or then a 20. So we've been able to do that. We've got some marketing folks from our railroad in the room today. They're projecting up to 33,000 carloads for us next year, based largely on increased consumption in Long Island and in the surrounding communities. A lot of stone and cement, food products and things like that continue to be consumed. Our population is not getting smaller. Long Island continues to grow despite everybody moving to North Carolina. I'm not gonna go through this whole one, but it's very succinctly put. There's only so much capacity on the highways. There is additional capacity on the railroad. So we have to find a way, and that's incumbent upon us, but we would like any help or ideas that can be given. It's incumbent upon us to find a way to move those things to the rail, not only for our pockets, but also for traffic mitigation on Long Island. We can move it closer to its final destination, and it's a much shorter truck haul from that point. That's how things are going to get there.
Buffalo and Plattsburgh down to the Boundary at the southern tip of Manhattan.
We're supposed to talk about transportation infrastructure investment, right? So and Jerry touched on most of these in his first slide. As a private railroad, a lot of the things that we do are privately funded. We have an annual capital plan. This year's will be $1.5 million, which is a pittance compared to what some of the other fundings are. But those are investments that we make. They have to have a complete, provable, and demonstrable benefit and a return on investment for us to put those in. Customers also make those. Long Island Railroad has been supportive, and typically Long Island Railroad is not supportive because they just want to be great. It's typically because it provides them some ancillary benefit as well. Part of the double track project, which was a lot of pain for us this summer, because there was a lot of construction going on, it was difficult for us to run, but they've interlocked a couple spots for us, and that in effect means that we can get in and out of a couple places faster than we were ever able to before. So there are long-term benefits to us. I'm paraphrasing very, very, very heavily what I heard Governor Cuomo say during the announcement of the third track project was, if we do this, there's going to be some people that are unhappy. But if we don't do it, there's going to be a lot of people that are unhappy. And so that's the story that we try to tell when somebody is unhappy with a freight train rolling by us. We do our very best to mitigate those concerns and be as quiet as possible, but when you're rolling 10,000 tons, it's not a clandestine movement. We try very hard. But Long Island Railroad has helped with a lot of those improvements. The EPA has participated in the locomotive emissions movement. New York City Economic Development Commission has come out with a program this year that are going to try to impact us and the surrounding communities and make some better places for rail stop-offs. State funding is great. Federal funding is even better. We received some positive train control funding from the FRA this year, and you have to make a good case for those, and we've done that. And Long Island Railroad has supported that again. I'm going to keep saying that, I'm sorry. But they are, and so we are privileged and honored to be able to have this franchise, and we take it very seriously. We take the safety of our employees seriously as well as the safety of the public. In each of these examples, even if it's 100% federally funded, we make a significant contribution to that. It's our person power, it's our engineering, it's our control of a lot of that work, and we don't bake those into those funding requests. So we are providing a positive benefit there as well. I'm not going to bore you with each project, but the red projects are very large, completed projects that are joint funded, either state and us, Fed and us, Long Island and us. Yellow are completely private funded, those are typically customers, and then the green are proposed and approved. In the last 21 years, we've paid almost $35 million in fees to the Long Island Railroad for the use of their track. So I don't want it to look like that we're getting a handout from the Long Island, we're not. We paid for that opportunity. And we've also put about $40 million worth of capital funding into infrastructure on Long Island and in Queens and Brooklyn. And the interesting thing about that is when we put that money in, once it goes into the ground, it becomes the state of New York's. It's Long Island Railroads, it's cities, it's the states. We're not putting money in and then getting a return on investment for us for a physical infrastructure investment. It's only for the use of it. So, and I don't need to talk about this again. That's from Newsday 2010, I love it. I told Donna earlier, I'm moving to Hempstead like today, literally. So I'll be back to Long Island again, and so I'll suffer with this, except I now know that I can ride a nice bus from my house to Hempstead Station and then take the train, so I'll do that. And I talked about being an economic driver. Every dollar that a freight railroad spends comes back to that community tenfold. And we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to support those things. And we have some great jobs. So if you know somebody that's out there who's interested in a blue-collar profession, our engineers and conductors are represented by the same union that the Long Island Railroad engineers are represented by. I'd say average salary for those folks, not including benefits package, is over $100,000 for engineers and conductors. It's a terrific job. Quality of life is questionable, but we try to make up for that. And each one of those jobs supports another 9 jobs at the customer base. So that's a little bit about us.
Thank you, James. Join me in thanking the panel for their presentation. We have a couple minutes for some questions, which we'll get to. I was very impressed with the fact that James was able to mention beer 4 times. Sound like a Senate hearing. So let me just go down over here, and we'll take some questions for the panelists. And we only have one mic, so I'm going to have to run back and forth.
Hi. The last 10 years I've been enjoying taking the train into the city a lot, and it's great. But I can't get a bus from where I live to the train station.
We're excited for phase 2.
All the bus stops are not covered, people are standing there, it's cold, it's snow, it's raining. I am now embracing the fact that I'm 60 and I'm a senior citizen, but the fact is I need help in order to continue my quality of life.
That's a great point. Does the current level of service support all 32 train stations that we support? No, it doesn't. We have an administration now in Nassau County that's very pro-transit, and we're hopeful that the service will grow over time. The microtransit solutions that we're talking about are fairly a new solution that, again, we've just started to pilot. And we hope that with the help of your particular village, they possibly can help bridge that last mile solution or longer. But those are things that we are working on as we look at that surge to the railroad station. We have a very mature transit system here. In other words, our bus transit map has generally stayed the same over the last 10 years, and we're just in the process over this last year and a half to adjust every single one of those routes to address that exact need. But great point. So microtransit or last mile solution transit is how do you bridge that gap between your house and that bus stop? It's a half a mile, it's a mile, it's 2 miles. And where is that bridge? How do I get that customer from deep inside a Levittown community to that bus stop? And those are solutions we're all looking at. We're looking at that, but also people like Amazon are looking at that. How do they get that package to your address from a central hub? And that's that last mile piece. There's not one solution. Maybe it's a bike share, a car share, Uber, a Lyft. Our solution, which is Buzz or Link. Those are all the things that we're looking at. there's not one great solution there. It all depends on each neighborhood. But
Thank you, Jack. I'm going to go down this side. Questions over here? All the way to the back.
But things are still pretty organized, right? But then sort of get out
Keeping
of
me young.
control, and we just focus on movement, and some stuff on the side, right? And
I'm a young planner on Long Island. I do long-range planning for economic development, transit development, downtown development, and a little transportation planning. I was wondering how you guys do your work reviewing the expansion of your networks based on economic development for Long Island and New York
flexible
City.
spaces.
For example, your companies are also supposed to be cutting back on vehicle miles traveled and eventually car usage. So are you reviewing Long Island as its own network and not just getting to New York City?
Ways of moving things around. I don't know if you've seen the UPS now.
All right, so I think that I'm going to ask Donna to take a crack at that.
we didn't quite hear it. Got the microphone.
So he's doing long-range planning. He's wondering how you, as you're planning your expansions and your service upgrades, are considering economic development and VMT reduction on Long Island as opposed to for New York City.
For more bike share, for scooters.
In terms of our long range, I'm responsible for the Long Island Railroad Capital Program Development, so a lot of our planning has to do with infrastructure improvements of rail. So a lot of, we don't really get into the service planning perspective has to do with more our ridership forecasting or growth forecasting, and then of course we will look at how to balance our service. The next time we'll actually take a good look at that is actually when East Side Access actually comes online, because that's when we're expecting to see that growth. And so then we will actually have a service plan in place that, we would have looked at the different branches, because of course we operate by branch, just to see where the expectation is in terms of where we expect additional riders to come from, and a service plan is developed based on that. So we are actually in the process of retooling, because it does take a few years to get that together. So you will see a brand new service plan rolled out once we have this brand new service to Eastside.
Mobility as a service or transportation network companies, those two last terms I just said.
I'm going to go down on the left side here, somebody in the back.
Right, so, what we always say.
Thank you. By the way, kudos to New York State for investing in mass transit. It is a good investment. But my question is about Nice Bus. One of the things that I know, I have two children that one lives in Manhattan, the other one moved from Manhattan, never owned a car in their life, still don't own a car, and they use all forms of transit. In fact, at last resort, they will take a zip card if they have to. But I notice on Long Island, people, for the most part, and you can argue with me, use buses as an alternative because they don't own a car. Oftentimes, intra-island transportation, it is like a two-tiered system, where it's not in other parts of the world, like in Europe. How do we change that view, that stigma, if you will? It's almost like a stigma to take a bus on Long Island, and that always bothered me. And a lot of it is aesthetics. When you talk about, everyone knows what a bus looks like, why is that? Why do buses all look the same and look like they did when I was in junior high school? I have to tell you, the buses now, yes, they have, they're a hybrid, they're this, but they look like they did when I was in junior high school in Brooklyn, Guanahati Junior High. They should, I really think that as people start moving to Long Island, the young people, they're looking for aesthetics. They're looking for those buses. How do we change it where mass transit is cool for everyone? That it's not just because you don't have a car that you're taking the bus or the train or this, but it's for everyone. And to make an economic driver with mass transportation, it's cool for all levels of incomes.
Okay, so that's definitely for Jack. Good luck.
I'll stand for that one because I realize and no, I am standing. So that's a great question.
If we're not successful,
understanding what we can do here on Long Island and the streets that we operate in is different. And I'll challenge you on this because our buses are different from anywhere else. We have articulated buses. We have CNG buses. We have 25-foot buses. Again, we have a very diverse fleet. When you get on a bus now, you're not getting on necessarily your typical 40-foot bus. Depending on where you're living, you may be getting on a 20-foot bus. You may be getting on a articulated bus. So those things change. Yes, how they use the bus is what's going to get them on that vehicle. I've got three kids just out of college. All three of them live in Brooklyn. But this is really what drives them. So now you can buy a bus ticket on your phone. You can see where the bus is. You can plan your trip on the phone using the bus. You can get on Wi-Fi on the bus. All those things are starting to propel the demographic to be more diverse on the vehicle. We want to serve everyone. I think the next generation coming up will automatically gravitate to the vehicle because that's how they gravitate to phones, they gravitate to computers. They know it inherently. They don't have to be told that. Us, me, I grew up in LA, I rode RTD. I never had a car until I was 22. That's when I could afford a car. So that becomes part of me. We, as an older generation, need to push that. They're motivated by different things. But yes, the look is one of them. And we are pushing our bus designers and our aesthetics to bring that up too. But it's a whole package of stuff, right?
As I was in the back, actually, somebody asked me a question to ask about the Hicksville, right? Yes. Hicksville parking garages? Do you have any information about the status of that?
I mean, 10 minutes left. That is actually owned and operated, maintained by the town of Oyster Bay. So it's not really Long Island Railroad's property. We support, and we're always there to hear, but it's actually not Long Island Railroad.
I think the question on that was regarding the new proposed ones from the third track bus. Especially the train station and that particular stretch from Plank train station to Village.
And what was the question?
Is there a timeline for when they are going to start funding and building?
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah, I cannot speak to the timeline right now because that is still a part of the whole construction project. So we don't have a specific timeline, but as you know, we've been working with all the towns in terms of where these parking garages are going to be located. But as you know, the project itself is stretching out to 2022. So just know that they'll be built during that time.
All right, we have time for one more question, and this gentleman actually caught my eye when I was coming down before. So you had a question?
Hi, Bill Miller, represent Electric. I apologize, Bill Miller. We were involved in the first phases of the train renovation, the train station renovation. And I heard before that you said there were 39, I believe there were 254 stations to be changed. And my question is, when are the next phases of that going to start? We see motion regards to that.
So these are the railroad stations?
Are you talking about the railroad station? You meant the railroad only has 124 stations. The railroad only has 124 stations, so I'm not sure what project you're talking about. The 39 stations that were referenced in the presentation, those are 39 of the 124. These are station upgrades that, again, something that was selected by Long Island Railroad in terms of stations that are in the most need for upgrades, and some were actually already included in our capital plan. And those are the ones that you see rolling out. Hicksville, of course, is one of them, and that's one that's completed. We have the Farmingdales, Deer Park, Brentwood, so those are the stations we're talking about. No, those 39 stations have already been selected, and actually the award has already been given. So we do have contractors already working on it. It's just the phasing of when the work will actually get done. And we actually expect it to be all done mostly by next year.
Okay, so we have to move another group in here on another panel, and I want to again thank the panelists for their presentations and their discipline in limiting them to 10 minutes. Thank you all for your attention to these issues. They're very, very important to Long Island, and we're in a very critical stage.